Our guest today is Ben Pakulski, the world's top authority on intelligent muscle building and fat loss. His podcast, Muscle Intelligence, gives a simple to understand deep dive into the complex world of bodybuilding and building a body you love and living in your greatness. He hosts weekly interviews with leading experts in a vast number of scientific fields focusing on health optimization. Ben is the founder of Ben Pakulski Fitness International. He's also the founder of Muscle Intelligence and also MI40 Brands. He's former Mr. Canada and IFBB professional bodybuilder. He is most well known for his intelligent approach to building maximum muscle, has helped over 100,000 men and women to change their body and life with his methods. Ben began building his body at 15 years old, turned professional at his sixth show at 26 years of age. He is here in Tampa, Florida, which is right here, which is pretty exciting, Tampa Bay. And what's really fun is he's placed third and qualified to compete in Mr. Olympia. Some of his highlights of his career is placing first in 2016 Vancouver Pro, competing twice in Mr. Olympia competition. He is since retiring from competitive bodybuilding, Ben focuses on spending time with his children here in Tampa, travels the world, and his mission is to empower men and women with the knowledge and skill set to build their greatest body and live the greatest life. So you are going to love this show. Welcome, Ben Pakulski. So welcome back to the Better Than Rich show, and we have Ben Pakulski here. I am super pumped for this conversation, and Andrew Biggs and I have been preparing for this convo for a while. And if you don't know Ben, he grew up obese and then went to become Mr. Canada. He grew up with a learning disability and a speech impediment, and then he became a very successful business person. His family of obese alcoholics and addicts did not stop this guy from running just a beautiful life and creating a beautiful experience, raising his kids. And ironically, he grew up living in a stage of being able to not. We'll cut that out. Ironically, he grew up. That this verbiage right here isn't great, but let me at the bam. My apologies. And now Ben is a podcaster, public speaker. He's lived on stage as a professional bodybuilder, now travels the world teaching cutting edge science and human performance. Ben, thank you for being here on the Better Than Rich show. We're excited to have you.
Thanks for the invite, gents. You come very highly recommended from some mutual friends, so happy to do it.
Well, I know you've had some unbelievable guests on your Muscle Intelligence podcast, and anybody who wants to, there's probably 100 other episodes that you've been interviewed on, and you have tons of great content out there. I wanted to dive right in, if that's okay with you, instead of like going to the backstory and everything. They can learn your backstory anywhere. Is that okay?
Yep, of course.
All right. So I want to start with, you have some experts on your show. I have a couple of their books, Lifespan by David Sinclair. We got Will Cole, The Inflammation Spectrum. I mean, so many unbelievable experts. And you have these individuals on your show. And then you have people on Netflix, claiming that they're experts. And you have people on the news claiming they're experts. And you have people in the education system claiming they're experts. And there's all these different disparities of who's considered the expert and who do we listen to in society. And you have your 6 pillars: mindset, training, nutrition, sleep, environment, breath. So underneath those 6 pillars, there's all these different experts on what they have to say about these 6 pillars. Why is there so much confusion in the marketplace on who's considered a quote unquote expert? And how could someone figure out where they should get this information from? And how have you figured out where to get the proper information from?
Yeah, Mike, what I find is that, and to kind of use a metaphor, as you rise to the top, as you rise to the top of the totem pole, we'll say in science, everyone's kind of saying the same thing. There's much less disparity at the top. When I say the top, the people who are doing the research, like deep involved into what they do, and there seems to be a lot more commonality amongst those people than there is amongst the lower level people, the people who just hear things and spout sound bites, right? So the confusion tends to come from the 10-second sound bite that is taken out of context, perpetuated through social media, and then people think they're an expert on something without having really any clue what they're doing. And the best example is personal trainers, right? So 95% of personal trainers in this world are, not great at what they do, not experts, but yet because they have the title of personal trainer, most people assume, oh, this person must know what they're doing. But in reality, they're a far cry from quote unquote expert. But as I say, as you ascend to the proverbial top of any educational academic realm, it seems like there's much more consensus than there is argument. Now, in some areas, there's definitely some pushback, but it's just lack of a common objective or a common perspective. There's definitely some people who like, hey, I'm looking at it through this lens, you're looking at it through that lens. We're both right contextually through how we're looking at it, but because we're looking at it from a different perspective, we may not see eye to eye to it, but we can agree to go, yeah, contextually that may make sense, and contextually this makes sense. So when the average person is listening to a podcast, they may not have contextual understanding of like, okay, well, where does that apply? Example, low fat, high carbohydrate or high fat ketogenic diet, right? Like, is that the best diet in the world? No, it's contextually very, very effective for a large percentage of people. Is a low fat, high carb diet the best diet in the world? Maybe, depending what what the person's objective is, right? So if I'm training a pro athlete for a gold medal, I'm not going to put them on a ketogenic diet. Most likely, I need high performance fuel, carbohydrate in this case. If I'm training someone who's relatively sedentary, who maybe has some metabolic damage, some metabolic inefficiencies, well, maybe higher fat diet works. But most people hear the soundbite like, oh, I should be a vegetarian because that's the healthiest. It's completely contextually dependent, right? So is carnivore diet healthy? Yes, for a really small percentage of population. Is a vegan diet healthy? Yes, for a really small percentage of population, and everywhere in the middle, right? So if we assume a vegan diet is great for 10% of the population and a carnivore diet is great for 10% of the population, and everyone else exists in a continuum somewhere in the middle, everything has value. When you start to understand context based on your genetics, based on your lifestyle, based on your goals, right? All those things are contextually dependent.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Ben. I mean, that's huge. And I really love what you said there. I was going to ask, what were those kind of factors in terms of how to determine what sort of diet you should be focused on, what sort of protocols you should be focused on? I'm curious, with all the experts that have been on your show and all the people that you've had a chance to meet, these, true top tier, top of the totem pole scientific minds. What are some of the biggest interesting sort of realizations that you've had recently, maybe in the last 3 to 5 years? Let's start with the health and wellness space, around like common myths that are being debunked, or just edges that you have access to that maybe the average person on the street doesn't have access to. What would you say are like the top, 1 to 3 myths that you've had uncovered here recently in the last 3 to 5 years?
Sure, Andrew. So I work a lot in the high performance space, and I'll tell you, I think breathing is a performance enhancing drug, for lack of a better term. It's a PED. So 5 years ago, well, maybe now 7 years ago, I didn't even realize breathing had any contextual relevance to high performance, relief of stress, just even acknowledging like where my current state of arousal is, right? Am I hyper aroused? Am I calm and lethargic? And everywhere in the middle. I had no idea that breathing was probably the greatest gateway we have into accessing what I call the warrior and the monk, right? So if I'm training, I want to be able to access a warrior, meaning I want to be able to go run through the wall, lift the heaviest thing I can, sprint, fight, whatever it happens to be. I can access that in one breath, right? A really aggressive inhale that can turn on a sympathetic arousal, maybe even adrenaline, cortisol response, getting your body ready to go, versus one breath in the other direction, which is super slow, can bring me out of this high state of arousal and into a cool, calm, focused state. So that's one thing that completely blew my mind with the scope of the opportunity that exists there. So I work with a lot of pro athletes, a lot of high levels, execs, entrepreneurs, and most people they're not even aware of their breath, right? Let alone realizing that they don't need coffee, they don't need Adderall, they don't need stimulants when they learn to simply control their breath. They don't need sleeping aids, they don't need anti-anxiety medications always, when they can learn to control their breath. And I think that's been a complete paradigm shift for me. And gosh, I wish I had known that when I was younger. And now I teach every professional athlete. The first thing, and anybody, not even professional athlete, anybody, like the first thing you should be aware of is how you're breathing, right? From a perspective of, where are you minute to minute, right? Am I breathing a lot? Am I breathing shallow? Am I breathing deep? Minute to minute, that's going to control your ability to focus. your ability to digest nutrients, like how much fat you're using every minute versus carbohydrate you're using every minute. All of these things are tied into how you're breathing. And so there's 3 levels to breathing, which I don't need to get into, but everyone should be aware of those 3 levels, right? So it's biomechanics, biochemistry, and cadence. And so for anyone listening, pay attention to biochemistry, biomechanics, and cadence, and learn what those are and understand them at a very, very even primitive level. And you'll change your life. You'll change your ability to access the state that's appropriate for the circumstance, right? If I'm in the gym trying to train heavy leg day or deadlifts, or I'm fighting, or whatever it is, jiu-jitsu, I don't want to be the same person as when I'm reading my daughter a book to go to bed, right, at night. That doesn't make sense. So I need to be a very different level of arousal. And if I'm not consciously aware of the level of arousal, then I'm going to kind of end up wherever I end up, right? The world or the circumstance is going to create my internal state. Whereas if I want to be an empowered person, I want to create my internal state and then take that into the world with me, right? Completely different perspective shift. I create my mind, I create my body, and I show up in the world the way I want to. I don't allow the world to create me.
I'm you piqued my curiosity on this monk versus warrior breath example, because the way I interpret that is masculine and feminine energies.
No,
Okay.
maybe, but I would say, like, when I say a monk, it's at peace, um, undisturbed by the surroundings, right? So I'm uninfluenced by my circumstance. I could be sitting in the middle of chaos, and I'm completely centered, and I'm completely still. My breath is calm. My words are calm and intentional, right? There's no chaos. The opposite of chaos, right? Whereas a warrior is assertive, directive, aggressive, moving towards something, probably training, lifting, fighting, any of those things. And that's how I would say it. So if you want to think of it in a simple way, with one fast, aggressive inhale in, I can shoot my heart rate up, let's say 90 beats per minute. It immediately shoots up. And conversely, I can bring my heart rate down to 40 beats per minute in literally one breath if I'm well trained, right? And so the less divergence I have between the breath on inhale and the breath on exhale, the less well trained I am. So if you're someone who's sitting at home and you say, hey man, I took this breath in and didn't really feel like my heart rate went up. I take this breath out, didn't really feel like my heart rate went down. You probably don't have a high axis of control over your nervous system. That means you kind of show up the same way wherever you go, right? And a high performance athlete, high performance executive, I don't want to show up the same way going to the gym as I am, coming home to, I don't know, have dinner with my family. I got to learn to control those things. And the breath is the gateway.
I'm very interested in this because, I did an 8-day meditation retreat with Dr. Joe Dispenza. And I mean, it took a lot of patience, a lot of like really getting in tune with the body and breathing up the different chakras and understanding how to unlock the pineal gland, his book, This Becoming Supernatural, and all that. It's like, I don't know if there's many people who are willing to go through that much time to access and understand their breath. So that's why they'll take like a supplement. What would you say to a person that wants the quick pill versus going through 8 days of like 5 hours a day of meditation to understand their body and their breath work, and that they want something a little bit quicker or faster or easier access or something along those lines?
Unfortunately, the reality of modern society is everyone wants instant gratification, and that's literally the downfall of our current society, isn't it? It's like every man ultimately who should be forging himself in the fire, the fire of challenge, intentionally subjecting himself to hard things, intentionally prolonging gratification and aspiring for fulfillment. We're seeking instant gratification. It's become an instant gratification culture, and every man out there. Not every man, many men are saying, oh, my testosterone's low, my body fat's high. Yeah, it's literally because of instant gratification. So if you're a man who says, hey, I aspire to be the highest version of myself, I aspire to accomplish great things in this world, I aspire to have great sexual encounters and great relationships, then you must, right? Then you must pursue things that are outside of your level of control. If you're someone who's constantly reaching for the quick fix, the pill, the instant gratification, pornography, the fast calories, high calorie dense foods, then you're literally the opposite of what you should be and what your soul is ultimately here to do. As a man, we're seeking high level of purpose and fulfillment, right? Everyone speaks of, I want higher purpose in my life. Well, in order to aspire for purpose, in order to seek purpose, first we have to take care of the little things in our life. We have to check the little boxes. Am I doing the little things well? Allow me then to progress up and do the potentially more impactful things in life, right? Nobody's going to trust you to run the country if you can't balance your own checkbook, right? So like think of like what are the high level things that I'm aspiring to do that are purpose filled, and am I doing all the little things in my life effectively? So, in order to aspire for anything of fulfillment and purpose, there's a process, man. You're going to have to go through the hard times. You're going to have to intentionally subject yourself to learning new skills, developing character, becoming a better man, like finding who you are. And ultimately finding who you are is forged in the hottest fires, right? So if you're a man who's aspiring for like, I want to do big things in this world, great. That's awesome. As you should be, as your soul is called to be, right? I have a belief that every man is called to do great things in this world. But somewhere along the way, we get derailed by expectations in society that says, oh, it's okay. It's okay to be mediocre. It's okay to not work hard. It's okay to sit on your ass and accept all those comforts. And listen, I'm not perfect. I'm guilty of things too, but I intentionally seek hard things, right? I intentionally find men who will challenge me, both mentally and physically. I'm always being coached by somebody who I think is going to hold me to the highest standard and make me think better, make me train harder, make me push myself. The more I can surround myself with a community of hard driving men, not men who are looking for instant gratification and glorification and gratification from like, oh, you're so great, you're so wonderful. I don't need that, right? It's ironic because as I made my living on stage in my underwear, and everyone goes, oh, it must have been a very vain pursuit for you. And thinking on it, I didn't care about the contest, man. It's ironic that the contest for me was a pageant. What I did bodybuilding for was like I grew up, as I said, a very self-identifying lazy kid. Like I grew up in a family of lazy people. I never had someone to inspire me to work hard in anything. So bodybuilding for me was the daily battleground to challenge myself, to prove to myself that I was a man. I was like, I'm going to go in there and give my best. And every single person that I ever meet is going to say I'm the hardest working motherfucker they've ever met. And that's my reputation. And that was my badge of honor, right? It's like no one's going to hang. Like I'll do two to everyone, whatever you do. Let's go. And if someone could hang, then I was like, yeah, I found another warrior, right? I found another person who's aspiring for that level of pursuit of self-betterment. And I'll tell you what, I've trained with a lot of people, and I've trained with a lot of true champions and warriors. And I've trained with a lot of people who aren't and simply don't have that mindset. And I hope to bring that mindset to the world. I hope to bring the mindset of like, man, and I should differentiate. When people hear warrior and they hear like this aggressive training, it doesn't necessarily mean we call it like toxic masculinity. This framing that gets thrown out there. People are like, oh, were you aggressive? Yes, I was aggressive, circumstantially, right? Just because I'm aggressive in the gym when I'm training, moving toward my goals, doesn't mean that I'm going to come home and misuse my words with my partner or my kids or be aggressive in public. Those are not the same thing. To me, that's the sign of a child, not the sign of a man, right? A man has the ability to be ruthless. A man has the ability to be, as Jordan Peterson will say, like a terrible person. Like you ultimately have the ability, but the true power is choosing not to do it. Right? You want to be ultimately capable of doing anything, but the conscious decision to not makes you a strong, powerful man.
Such a good insight, Ben. I mean, I'm loving this. You have me like on the edge of my seat. So thank you so much. What is coming up for me is like this discipline, this focus, this capacity to master your mind and then master your action. Is that something that, you just, you said you were a self-identified lazy kid, but like, what's manifesting in front of me here today is anything but, and what everyone sees in your podcast on a weekly basis is anything but. So how do you actually develop that? If someone's listening right now and they go, yeah, I'm not self-disciplined. Yeah, I am lazy. Yeah, I go for the quick fix. I go for instant gratification. How do you develop that sort of mindset? Because when I hear you talk, I mean, like basically besides David Goggins, I haven't heard anyone nail it as well as you just did. So how do you develop that and actually get that mindset to approach life?
I'll be honest, man. For me, it was 20 years, right? Like what everyone sees now, they didn't see the struggle from 15 to 35 of me, toggling on the line of like self hatred and, just like it's lack of contentment and not being able to accept that I didn't do well that day. Like so for me, it was 20 years, man. It wasn't something that happened overnight, and it wasn't a linear path, that's for sure.
Well,
But I also,
tell me about those struggles. What were some of the
I will.
struggles, like self-hatred? Yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah, I also wouldn't take no for an answer, right? So it's the mindset of I changed my time horizon, right? So if everyone's trying to do it in 3 months, good fucking luck, right? Like change your time horizon. Go, hey, who do I want to be in 20 years? Right? There's a book called The 25-Year Framework by Dan Sullivan. Read the book. It's like, I don't know, 50 pages or something, very, very short. And he talks about creating a 25-year timeline for yourself, because now that takes those goals and it pushes them way off in the future, and it makes it more realistic about what I can do today. So one of my goals for my 65th birthday is I want to be able to surf. I can't surf now. So 5 years ago, I sunk like a stone. I was a professional bodybuilder. So one of my goals is I want to be able to surf with my kids. Like I have no intention or no capability of doing it now, but because I have a 25-year time horizon, it changes perspective. So what are those struggles? Well, the reality is I was obese as a kid, and probably, and it sounds ridiculous, but I had an incredibly hard time building muscle when I started. And that is why I'm considered one of the best muscle building experts in the world now, because I wouldn't take no for an answer. And I had to find a solution. I wouldn't let myself say, I'm going to give up. I'm like, oh, no, that just wasn't an option for me. I was like, I'm not going to stop until I get there. I have no idea how I'm going to get there. And I've tried so many ways that failed time and time again. But I just kept going. It's the same with making money, right? Like if you just don't create a time horizon and go, I don't care how long it takes, but I'm going to get there. Like, I have very specific financial goals, and I'm not there yet. I have no idea how I'm going to get there. But I'll tell you what, I'll never stop. Never, right? Until I accomplish my goals. I work harder than not I should say everyone, but most people, right? But it's not hard work. It's just like I have this standard to which I hold myself. I'm like, I want to make $100 million. And like, until I get there, I'm just not there yet. Just keep going, just keep going, just keep going. Lean in, right? So set goals that are significant, that ultimately inspire you to get up and hold yourself to a higher standard. So for me, the thing that changed my capability or my belief in myself was when I was 17 years old. I went to the Mr. Olympia in 1998. And I said, this is what I'm going to do. I said, I'm going to be the best bodybuilder in the world, and I'm not going to stop till I get there. And so I was 17 years old. I was 160 pounds, maybe 155 pounds, same height, same build, like the same structure, zero muscle. Like I was, fat at 160 pounds. And I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I have no idea how I'm going to do it. So what that did is it allowed me to not compare myself to the guy beside me in the gym. I wasn't comparing myself to the best guy in the gym or the best guy in the city or the country. It's like now I'm comparing myself to the best guys in the world, so that I'm not so quick to be swayed by positive feedback or negative feedback, right? I use negative feedback as fuel. Like when someone goes, man, you look great. It didn't influence me. I didn't care. It was more about like, okay, thank you. Keep moving, right? I'm like, I'm not where I want to be yet. So that's one of the things that I think set me apart from everybody else, or like at least most people, was the standard to which you hold yourself. So all the guys in my coaching community now, the thing that I do for you is I up level your standard. I up level what you think is possible for you, because I see what's possible for you and you don't. Most people don't, right? Not every guy understands that he could do literally anything if he changes his time horizon. So if I want to try to set a 3-month or a 12-month goal, man, that's a lot of pressure, and it's putting a lot of expectations on you to perform at your best every single day. Whereas if I make a 20-year time horizon, that completely changes things. And that's really what I think made the difference for me.
Man, you're already giving us the goods, Ben, and I appreciate that. You struck a chord with me when you said when you were talking about the going into the bodybuilding. I don't know if you know this or not, but my dad, he was a bodybuilder. He competed in New Jersey, and my 3 older brothers were bodybuilders. And I relate very heavily to your story because I was overweight. I was 240 pounds going into high school. So I was a big boy. So growing up obese and being surrounded by health, I almost like went in the opposite direction. It's like, oh, I can't be that. So therefore I'm just going to be, this version of me, this soft version of me, whatever. But one of the things that my dad used to share with me in bodybuilding, he was like, Mr. Trenton could be Mr. New Jersey, Mr. Delaware Valley, was when all the unhealthy, like the steroids and these enhancements and all these things started coming into bodybuilding, it almost like had him lose interest, because he even though he was competing against himself, like you said, it's just like it's almost like competing against yourself in an unfair type of situation. He was Jewish, as well. So on top of that, there was a lot of anti-Semitism on top of the steroid enhancements and everything. I'm just curious from your lens, like, did you experience any of these types of nuance in the outside world that started kind of impeding on this inner voice? Because you had this inner strength, but like, it's kind of sometimes if it's coming from all these angles, maybe it makes it tough. I saw it from him telling me these stories. I'd be interested to hear from your lens.
Yeah, man. Listen, there's struggles coming from every different direction, to include the steroid thing, right? And so as a kid, I don't claim to have been a wise kid. I don't claim to have been even an intelligent kid. I just knew that I was persistent. And I did steroids. I won't deny that. I did my share of steroids over the span of 15 years. And that was because I had my sights on that goal. And I was like, I didn't understand. Yeah, I didn't understand repercussions, right? I was so just myopically focused on the goal. And now I say, sometimes your greatest blessing in life is also your biggest curse. Because now I'm aware of the negative health repercussions, right? I'm like, I realized the damage I did to my body throughout that time, but I didn't know better then. I didn't care. I was like, I'm going to get for this goal and nothing's going to stop me. Get in my way, I'll run you over. And that was literally my mindset. And so there was a lot of struggles, man. There's a lot of struggles around legalities around steroids, right? I was very blessed to have low testosterone at a low age, probably from being self-inflicted, but I had a doctor who was able to prescribe it for me, which was very, very helpful, allowed me to stay on the right side of the law. But man, there was a lot of challenges, man. Like there's the people around you who are asking why you're doing it. There's this stigma around bodybuilders being dumb and bodybuilders being broke. And I was like, okay, well, let's not do that. Let's break those stigmas too. And yeah, so as far as like the struggles for me seem to keep people away from me because I wouldn't accept anything less than success out of myself. If someone wasn't on my side and behind me, then I viewed them as being in my way, and I would either completely exclude them from my life in a ruthless way, and not never necessarily in a mean way, but I was pretty ruthless with my time and my circles. Or I'd just run them over, man. Like I was like, I'm not going to stop. And I'm not giving that glory to that, right? I'm not saying that was the best way to do it. I was just saying I was a lost kid trying to find his way. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have somebody say, "Hey, man, chill out. Hey, man, control yourself." It wasn't until 26 years old that I had someone who kind of was a mentor to me and made me realize that all of these different emotions I'm experiencing, or these reactions that I'm experiencing from certain people in my life rubbing me the wrong way, had nothing to do with them and everything to do with me. I was like, "What are you talking about, man? Like the girl I was dating at the time, or my sister who and I used to fight, like." What do you mean? Like they're just terrible people? What? And he's like, no. Like it's your reaction to him and to them and your perception that makes you a victim to this situation. You can control it. I had no idea. Dude, 26 years old. I wasn't that long ago. It was 15 years ago. Like I had no idea. Like I was literally completely asleep to it. So I was very blessed to have some truly amazing mentors along the way who, I call them angels, man. These people that show up in your life at the right time to give you the right message, to give you the right lesson. Man, I've been so incredibly blessed, and I'm thankful for them every day.
And not too long after that is when you had your firstborn, right? At 31, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, I was actually 30 when my son was born. Just turned 31 just after that.
So you had this mentor that came in your life, and then circumstance, your next angel that kind of showed up. It's like I got to change a little bit, and
change a lot. Like I said, I was very selfish, very self-centered. Nothing else mattered to me. Like this is where I was going, and I was sent an angel, and it's my son. Is to this day, one of the greatest gifts of my life. I've got two angels, well, two children that are my angels. But even after the first, I was so stubborn. I was like, no, we're going to be buddies. We're going to train together. Like it's going to be great. He's going to be my little buddy. We're going to play sports together. And then God sent me another angel in the form of a girl, in the form of a daughter, and that just completely changed my heart, man. I wasn't able to be in any way the same person I was. I thought to myself, literally, like, how could I go to the gym and be this ruthless, driven animal and go home and love this little angel the way she deserves to be loved? I was like, I just can't do it. And I tried to fake it, man. She was born in 2013. I tried to fake it for 3 years and be like, I can still do it. I was a shell of my former self. And I'll tell you what, like, they saved my life, right? Like I would have just kept going, and I probably would have been Mr. Olympia. I still believe I would have been, but I probably would have died a lot younger. And I probably, who knows what would have come of me. And they made me realize that there's something bigger for me in this world. It's taking all those struggles all those lessons from my youth and from my teens and my 20s, and then helping spread the message to men. Like, hey, let's intentionally subject ourselves to challenge in a healthy way. Let's intentionally develop our character in a way that allows us to be good leaders to future generations, right? Why are we here? Right? That's my belief, is like,
Mm.
let's make this race and this species effective again, and or continue to ascend in a positive direction.
That's amazing. I mean, what it sounds like you went through a pretty big value shift, right? So here you are, you're this hyperachiever, right? Tip of the spear, sort of performance based person. And, you're the embodiment of what it means to be somebody who is disciplined, follows through, masculine. And then you have these two beautiful children, especially your daughter. Walk me through that value shift, because I think a lot of people listening are high achievers, but they're looking for something more. That's why we're the Better Than Rich show, right? We want you to be rich, but we want you to be better than rich. And so I guess from your perspective, what was that like, and what is that? How is that translated to what you do now, and how your focus has changed? What are your values that have shifted, and what do you value today?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Andrew. So first, you said especially my daughter. I want to acknowledge it's not especially my daughter; it's definitely both of them. She was just the second one that kicked me over the edge.
There you go.
And,
There you go.
both of them are they're 9 and 10 now, and they're truly the greatest people I know. And I feel so incredibly blessed to have both of them in my life. So I'll tell you what happened is, at that point, the spotlight had to be turned on me, right? So throughout my entire life, the spotlight was outside of me. I was pursuing things. I call it the proverbial mountain, right? I ascended the first proverbial mountain, which is ultimately this external thing that I think every man needs to go through to accomplish, to learn who you are, right? So it's like, I'm making money, I'm building muscle, I'm getting all these external validations. And when my kids were born, it started making me aware of all of my shortcomings as a man. It started making me aware of what I'm not good at, what I'm not capable of. Made me aware of my relationship with my parents, my relationship with myself, my relationship with my partner. Made me aware of all of those things, because I realized that they see everything that you do and hear nothing of what you say. Right? They're just watching. There's little mirrors and little sponges. So I was very aware of everything coming out of my mouth, everything that they saw. And so that really set me down this path of healing, right? Healing myself, healing my wounds, um, yeah, healing the relationships with my parents, with my partner, healing relationships with everybody, like trying to get rid of all of the daggers, and ultimately put my dagger in the ground rather than coming out with my dagger facing forward. I wanted to be a strong, steadfast man who lived, predominantly a stoic lifestyle, and just be a solid, grounded presence for them, and learn how to accept them without imparting my limitations on them, right? Without imparting my belief systems, my limits, right? I wanted them to live without limits, and I knew for them to live without borders or limits or boundaries, I needed to remove them from my belief systems, right? So many parents are stuck in their ways, and this is the way the world is, and this is the way my kids have to be, and it's all just complete nonsense. Mark Twain said, "Children are cursed with the unfulfilled dreams of their parents," and that's true. And I didn't want that to be the reality, man. I didn't want to put my bullshit on my kids, and so the work started for me. And listen, the work's still going on for me to this day. I'm suffering every day, um, literally suffering through decisions I made in the past, and like working through it. And it makes me a stronger man every day. It makes me so self aware of every little detail that comes out of my mouth. They're not just the words that come out of my mouth, but also their um, perception of it. Right. So the words that I say matter, but what matters even more is how they perceive it. So that makes me a level up on my level of awareness of like, yeah, I say this. Great. I meant it to mean this. But does their brain receive it that way? And so yeah, there's a lot of levels of value shift that have happened, Andrew. But I think first and foremost, the simplest answer is it went from an externally focused thing, from this achievement focused mindset, which is very common in men who ultimately are insecure, and I was overcoming my insecurity, because I wanted to prove something to the world or prove something to myself. To now, just like, I don't care, I don't have to prove anything to anyone. I just want to be the best man that I can.
It's amazing. And I mean, children have such a powerful sway and capacity to do that. And it just to watch you go, like, you literally could have been Mr. Olympia, but then for you to say that doesn't matter. What matters is how I'm raising my children. I know Mike has a question about schools, because I think you did some pretty cool stuff with your kids with schools, and even just getting into like modern issues. Mike, why don't you jump in on
Well,
that?
I thought it was fascinating because I heard in one of the interviews that you pulled your kids out of school because they were they had to walk against the wall, and it was like, well, shoot, I don't want them to like learn how to follow suit and just walk in line, walk with your arm against the wall. I want you to learn how to be independent and think independent, and like not follow the guidelines of what's imposed onto you from society or from the the higher ups of telling you what to do. So I thought it was really great, and I wanted to know, like, okay, how did that process go? Like, how did you say, hey, screw this, I'm going to change my all the things in my household, and we're now going to homeschool you and find a homeschool group? Like that's a pretty big decision, and I would love to hear just from you, and like how did that unfold? Because that's something I could totally see myself doing. Like I talked to my wife. We have a 20-month-old, so we're not there yet, but I am nowhere excited about putting him into any type of public school system. So I'd love to hear about that process.
Sure. So first thing I'll say is my mindset since the time I was a child is very rebellious. I've very much been like a lone wolf, rebellious kid. And like when it's all, I always say like rules were made for everybody else. And I'm not condoning that, but that's how I live my life, right? I live my life from a perspective of like, if there's a wall right there, I'm going to run around it. I'm going to run through it. And so not that I hope to impart that, that mindset on my kids, but it made me question the rules. It made me question the norm, the common paradigms. So when I put my kids into school, I wouldn't just accept the curriculum. I wouldn't just accept that the teacher was capable. I wouldn't just accept that the teacher had their best interests at heart. I wouldn't accept that the kids. I don't know. I wouldn't accept anything. I'd always do my best to think differently, to not just fit in to the norm because hey, this is what everyone does, right? So I'm so hyper aware of, like I said, not only the words that come out of my mouth, but their perception and how they perceive the world and what's influencing the way they see the world. And ultimately, we're little modelers, right? Like we model what we see. So it's like, okay, what are my kids perceiving? What are they understanding about the world based on what they're seeing there? And so I was like, okay, what this is teaching them, specific to that incident you're saying there, Mike, they're literally walking down the hall with their shoulder along the wall. And they weren't, if their shoulder left the wall, they would get in trouble. And I literally was like, I'm out. We're done. That's it. And because my children are my highest value, like I would give, as you guys know, I would give anything, including time. Many people say that. And sometimes I question my honesty on that also with myself. But I do believe that I would just do anything for my kids, including suffer, including, give up my dreams, like it doesn't matter at this point. I want to lift them up. I know there's some conflicting, conflicting words coming out there, meaning like, I know that I need to pursue my dreams so that I show them that they can too. But point being, I was like, if I need to sacrifice a few hours a day to do this, then I will. And, my wife at the time, which is now my ex-wife, I'll be transparent on that. She agreed that we can do this because, she very much had my back and she was very much like, yeah, I agree. I see it. Let's pull them out. So what we realized is people say, oh, you need school because they need to be social. That's horseshit. Your kids are learning more negative things from other people than they are positive things. My kids are incredibly social. They're incredibly confident. And what they need most is secure love and attachment from their parents. That's it. If you give them that, they'll come into the world with a completely different perspective. Whereas when they go to school, they're losing secure love and attachment. They're often getting challenged. They're thinking differently than maybe you want to impart them with, right? And again, I'm not saying that every parent is responsible enough to make these high level decisions for the kid, but ultimately it's your responsibility. So for me to be able to control what goes in was very important in the formative years. Now, we became incredibly lucky to find a homeschool collective with a lady who I think is the single greatest gift to education that I've ever come across. I've read a lot of books on education for kids. I've learned a lot about the school system. I've learned a lot about how to educate your kids. This lady is just an absolute gift. And she cared about those kids as much as I do. And she cared about their education probably more than I do, because she has a depth of understanding about education that I simply didn't even know existed. Like, she's looking at learning language and English and math on depths that I just didn't even know were real. And so I felt incredibly blessed. I think another act of an angel coming into our life to guide them, to be a strong female figure in their life, which they really both need. I think I feel like, that's why I did it. I mean, we're just very, very lucky, very blessed.
And that homeschool collective is in Tampa. Just selfishly curious on that one.
Yeah, it is.
That's beautiful.
And so I'll tell you what, man. Like, I'm doing everything in my power to financially get behind this lady, and help her build a bigger school, because her understanding of it, like the reason she's on this planet is to teach. Like, there's no question. She's got 3 kids. They're exceptional humans. She's just got exceptional values and morals, and she loves helping children. So she looks at education and like, it's like she just can look at a child, and she's almost like seeing it all in front of her. Like, she sees the whole child laid out in front of her, and she's like, "Oh, there's a little gap there. Let's address it this way. There's a little gap there. Let's address it this way." And man, I work with a lot of very intelligent people, and she's truly a gift. So yes, it's in Tampa, and I'm happy to share the name after the show.
Yeah.
So, and I'm happy to share if you guys put in the show notes or whatever, but I don't want her to get like all obscure types of,
No, I understand. Because I've looked into this. There's a service learning school in Tampa with a friend of mine, Jamie, and then there's Connor Boyack, who's out in Utah, I believe, and he has like a homeschool program and whatnot.
There's actually some good schools in Tampa, man. There's an Acton Academy, which you should look at. There's obviously Montessori, and there's this other one. So there's some good stuff there, man.
Yeah, that's great.
And I'm going to build the best one yet with this lady at the head.
Well, it sounds like there might be some future connections here, because Mike has always told me, Ben, that like one of his biggest dreams in the next 10 years or so is to start a school, right? Or at least be integrally involved in one. So I could totally see some connections.
I'm start a fund, Mike. I'm actually I'm moving forward and starting a fund, like a maybe it's a charity where we donate. I don't know the legality of it yet, but we're going to start a fund, because I want to help this lady open a school. Right now, she's got basically a home that it's not her home. It's a home where she's obviously renovated out to make this beautiful immersive learning environment. But it's still very small, and she can maybe have 10 children or 12 maybe. And so like to take it to what it should be. And again, I know she doesn't want to dampen the value.
Sure.
So we'll find a way to bring it to scale where we can involve more people and help her build that curriculum to share.
And before I kick it to Andrew, I just wanted to say that I'm inspired by your definition and your lens of why you do this for your kids and why this is important for you, because I very much align with your definition of you're raising self-aware humans. And you said it in such a beautiful method. Like, I was like, what is my objective as a parent? And I was like, when I heard your definition, I'm like, yes, that's it. That's my definition too. So raising self-aware humans, by you having that lens, you can make your decisions based upon that value. And I love that definition. I also loved how you talked about your family rules and how you came up with the values of respect, honesty, integrity, and how you can come up with the decision making. How do you make decision making is coming from these predetermined lenses that you've methodically thought out. And it's just I hope that more men do exactly that as the patriarch of their household. So I just want to acknowledge you for that and appreciate you for that beautiful gift of something that helped me define what I couldn't necessarily define on my own. So let me kick it to Andrew.
I'll tell you one more thing that's along those lines, and it's a very different perspective shift for a parent that may help some people. So when I started with this lady, and she kind of interviewed us to make sure we had a great fit, and obviously I was interviewing her because I'm super protective of who my kids are around, period. She said, I said to her, "Hey, can I speak with you for a second?" I said, you'll have these kids until they're ready to go to college. I can tell that you have their best interests at heart, but I'll tell you what, if they learn nothing, zero between now and the time they're 18, literally zero, but you can somehow harness a general love for learning and a curiosity and make them good people, then we win. It's like if they don't read a book, if they can't do 3+3, but they have a love for learning and a curiosity and they're good humans, then we win. Here's why I said that. Because most people are like, oh, they can't do that. They have to learn. Here's the reality. I didn't read a book until I finished high school. That's a fucking honest statement. I didn't read a single book. I got through high school winging it, completely winging it. And smooth talking the teachers and smiling my way through hard situations. And I didn't learn shit. And I still made it into university. I'm in Canada, so it's called university in Canada rather than college. By the time I got to college, actually, it was probably my last year of high school where I was like, oh shit, I better pull my shit together so I can get into college, because I know honestly, everyone's going, I got to go. So I finally started studying and learning. I learned shit until I was 18 years old, literally nothing. I mean, did I go to class? Sometimes. I often got kicked out of class because I was, someone who was answering questions in a way that wasn't the same way the teachers had answered. So, and I'll say, not that I'm the most successful man in the world, but I'll say I turned out okay, right? I turned out okay, not literally learning anything. I became a good person, learned how to work hard, became curious about what I'm curious about, right? Am I curious about everything? No. But I love what I love, and I'm very deeply committed to what I love. And man, I wake up every morning with a voracious desire to learn more. And I couldn't read a book until I was 15 years old, right? Could I read? Yes. But did I read? No. Literally not a single book. And so when my son finished Harry Potter last week, which is a 400 or 500 page book at 10 years old, I mean, he was reading when he was 6, but I was like, you're so far ahead of me, man. You're so, and I don't tell him that because I don't want him to know that I was a bum. Sometimes I tell him that I was a bum, but it's true. But so point being, parents, chill out on your kids getting A's. I get it. You want them to accomplish it, but what you really want out of them more than anything is the character to finish what you start, right? That's really what you're trying to learn in school. As a business owner, who do I hire? I don't give a shit if you got a PhD. Do you finish what you start? Do you have a voracious desire to do what you do really, really well? That's it. Do you get A's? I don't give a shit. Do what you do really, really well. Commit to that. And that's a character thing more than it is a straight A thing.
Well, Andrew, I'm going to kick it to you because you have Eli who's in that age range. So I'm sure.
I mean, we have a 7-year-old and we also have a 9-month-old. But I mean, we're doing a pretty good job. We get really positive reports, and also it's really hard. It's really hard to inculcate that curiosity. He goes to a private school, but so the teachers, we really appreciate them.
So I'm going to recommend a book before I know we're going to move on, but I'm going to recommend a book to every parent out there. Read the book Real Love by Greg Baer, Baer. It's certainly the best parenting book and certainly the best relationship book I've ever read. Probably my most highly recommended book to parents over the last 3 to 5 years. Just completely, I mean, for me, completely shifted my paradigm on how to parent and what you need to expect from your children, if anything.
Yeah. Thanks so much. I appreciate that. One of the things you keep mentioning is, this is how men should show up. This is how men should show up. You mentioned the phrase toxic masculinity earlier. Obviously, I like to use the phrase wounded masculinity. I was talking with one of the podcast guests earlier about this concept. But I think there's no denying that there's at least a crisis of masculinity in our culture. And also there's a lot of women listening too. And so I think what advice would you have for men in this culture? What advice would you have for women in this culture around that masculine feminine dynamics and how to actually step into either and when to use what and go on a little spout here around masculine, feminine and the current dynamics in the culture.
I'll tell you what, man, it's really hard right now for men to be men because women are being forced from a very young age into a masculine role, right? And they're learning to, they're forced to embrace more of their masculine energy, which is not better or worse. It just is, right? And so for a man in a current relationship to step up and start stepping into the masculine and maybe being assertive and being reliable and being the one who's, kind of the rock of the house, someone who's leading the household, may get met with some resistance, right? Like, oh, I can handle this for myself. I got this. Yeah, of course you can. But I want to help you. I want to do it for you. Like, I want you to just relax, right? I'm like, as a man, my I guess my vision of a man is the provider, right? The caretaker, the leader. And so a woman has to be willing to meet a man where he is or where he wants to go, and be vulnerable enough to allow the man to be the protector, to be the leader, to be the contributor, the person who's contributing the most, And I know that gets met with resistance. Like, women are, yes, women are absolutely capable of doing it. But I think in order to receive success or achieve success in a relationship, there has to be a polarity. And the absence of polarity is ultimately causes repulsion, right? So when a woman is being more masculine and a man is being more feminine, based on the roles as being defined in society, it literally causes repulsion and fighting. And so if a woman allows a man to be more masculine, therefore allowing her to be more feminine, to be the receiver, to be the caretaker, to be the lover, which I believe is her true essence, there should start to become more polarity, which is more attraction. Because, like, man, I guarantee there's women out there who are repulsed by their men right now because he's being feminine. I guarantee there's men out there who are repulsed by their women because they're being masculine. And it requires some grace. It requires some space, some forgiveness, some patience with an intentionality, like deep intentionality around, like, hey, I see where you're going. I see what you're doing. And I want to support you in that mission. And here's another thing that I learned very recently from a guy that I'm coaching with. Everything is circumstantial. So just because I'm masculine in one circumstance doesn't mean I need to be masculine in all circumstances. And that was a really big aha moment for me. And that really actually helped my current relationship enormously, because if I'm not showing up in my masculine in, say, a certain circumstance, an example being date night, I don't give a shit where we go for date night. I don't care what we eat. I don't care what we do. So I end up taking a passive role. I'm following. It's a feminine role. And then my partner steps up and she's planning things and she's doing it. I divert to her, and she resents me. She's like, well, he doesn't care about it. He doesn't want to plan these dates with me. I'm like, no, I just don't give a shit where we eat. So if we don't have an agreement that, hey, babe, would you mind being masculine in this role? And you plan, you do all the things, you do what you want to do. And I'm just going to be the receiver. I'm just going to come along with you. I'm going to have a great time. If we don't have an agreement on that, then there's animosity, right? There's resentment, there's repulsion. That was a very important thing for me. So even though I believe that I'm show up masculine in most circumstances, certain things I'm like, babe, I don't care what you put on the furniture. I don't care what you put on the walls. You take the lead on that. Okay? Yes, got it. Then there's an agreement, right? There's an expectation that's then clear. And so when we have mismanaged expectations, we fail, right? So we want to make sure that there's clear expectations, there's clear communication on who's going to do what in each role. And that allows us to have more polarity. My girl is going to take care of my certain things. She's going to be masculine in those things. And I can just sit back and be passive. Best example that you hear all the time is like, my husband didn't take out the trash. He's like, I don't value the trash. I didn't want to take it out. Well, as long as you guys have an agreement, like, hey, babe, I expect you to take out the trash. Guys, they pick it up Wednesday morning. Please take it out Tuesday night by 9 p.m. Perfect. There's an agreement. Do you agree to that? Yes. I hold that responsibility. Perfect. Right? So I think in life, this level of communication and expectation is the way we start to create more polarity, and the way we start to create more attraction. Polarity creates attraction, right? So I think learning about these circumstances has been very helpful for me in ultimately creating, hopefully, successful future relationships.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm in a Tony Robbins community, as I mentioned to you. The 2 millimeter club here in Tampa. So you obviously will need to come to a couple of our meetups and stuff. And that's something that we talk about in that community quite frequently, is because I know Tony talks about that polarity and the masculine, the feminine, and the 3 C's and the 3 U's, and that. But what you just said, damn, you spot on, Ben. Like that, especially with the circumstances, because it's true. There a lot of times it's like people think it's like a global belief, masculine in everything, feminine in everything, and they don't narrow it down to like what are the little wins, the little conversations, the little activities that need that energetic. And what happens is if it's an immature masculine, then what's going to happen is they're going to think, oh, but if I'm losing control, then I'm not good enough. So I'm going to project this immaturity. And then it becomes this like little boy versus the little girl energy. And that's not what we want either, because that's unhealthy in the relationship. So I really love, I love what you just said there.
Yeah, and I would say, like, as a strong man, I don't in any way want to disempower my woman. I want to lift her up in every way possible, right? Every way possible. So I want her to live in her power, so she doesn't feel like she has to be masculine. She can do what she naturally wants to do. It's more of a creative energy, right? We're going to lift up that creative energy, allow her to live in that feminine. And never am I trying to bring that down. I think that's important for men to acknowledge, is like, and sometimes women to acknowledge, like, I don't want men to control me. There's no control. There's simply support, right? Like, if I can take those things away from you that maybe you don't value or maybe you don't want to be doing, and you were simply doing it because you had to, you stepped up into that role like a champion. You took it on like you had to. Well, maybe I can take those away from you, allow you to focus your time and energy and consciousness on things that you actually value. Oh, okay. Then so I mean, this is a lot of communication, right? A lot of communication. I'm very blessed to have a partner who's incredibly communicative, and I'm so blessed for that. Because honestly, it's not my default. Throughout my life, I've had really bad examples of relationships, as far as like my parents, um, very unhealthy relationships. Most of my relationships throughout time, I wouldn't say they were bad, but they certainly weren't exceptional. They were not communicative. They were circumstantial and useful in the time. But now, for me to create a relationship that kind of works, because everyone's coming to a relationship with baggage. Everyone's got beliefs and they got thoughts and they got ways of being that we got to kind of unwind and learn how to like massage them and find how ways we can fit. And if we don't fit, then it's not going to work, right? So if you're committed to making it work with somebody, you got to communicate on every level. And I'll tell you what, my partner's way better at that than I am. So I'm very blessed.
That's great. Thanks for that. Andrew, I want to kick it to you, or you want me to take that as next one?
Yeah, go ahead, man.
We've really two final topics and curiosities, and then we'll start heading for the exits. We're milking your time here, and on that last thread of the masculine feminine, listeners, go back to Dr. Kelly Flanagan's episode. He did an awesome job talking about masculine feminine energy, so you could take a peek at that episode. But for last two topics, the first one is vaccines. And I know it's an interesting one, but I really love the way you talked about it on one of your past interviews, and I at least wanted to bring your philosophies to our audience on this, because you said that I'm not anti-vaccine, I'm anti-mandates. And with how much travel that you're doing, you travel the world, and you have we'll get into your business, which is the second question that we're going to talk about, but I'd really like your stance on this, because people, the things that are mandated, like you must not do this or you must do this, it seems as if it's there's reasons that are not spoken as to why they mandate vaccines, but they don't mandate restricting sugar intake or stuff like that. I just want you to speak to our audience about this.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what, man. My view on vaccines is pretty much the same as my view on masks. And I think there's a very good parallel there. I don't know about you, Mike, and you, Andrew, but if I was sick, meaning like I had any flu or cold or whatever, and I knew it was very contagious, I'd throw on a mask before I went into public. I'd be like, you know what? I'm going to protect the people around me from myself. And I think that's really, really a noble way to look at masks. Like, if I'm sick, I should put on a mask. Like, I shouldn't go into a school or a hospital or whatever and be sick unless I'm going to put on a mask. If I'm not sick, why am I wearing a mask? So the only reason I see value in vaccines and masks is if someone's sick or they're predisposed to being sick and they're trying to protect themselves, and it's their choice of, like, you know what, man, I know my immune system's compromised, or I know I'm 60 plus and I'm kind of worried that this thing might take me out. Amazing. Well, then you should wear a mask and you should get vaccinated, right? For sure. But if I'm someone who is in my 20s, 30s, 40s, and anywhere else, and I feel like I'm healthy, and I feel like if I get sick, I'm confident that my immune system can handle this. I don't want to put more toxins into my body. I'm going to go ahead and pass this time. It doesn't in any way put other people in more danger, right? In any way, it maybe puts me in more danger, but that's my choice. But, I'm going to stay with, like, you know what, if I get sick, I'll stay home. I'll throw a mask on. I'll get vaccinated if I think it's necessary. But in general, I think I'm good. Like, I think I train a lot. I eat really well. I spend a lot of time in the sunshine. I'm pretty grounded. My stress is managed. I'm going to take my chances against this thing. If it's something that's crazy, where like, hey man, if you get this and you're 25, you're going to die. Okay, great. I might decide, maybe not, but I might decide to do it. I think just to mandate things. I mean, clearly it's not about health. Clearly it's not about, hey, everybody, we want you to not get sick. Like, if you think that, you need to rethink your
Yeah.
paradigm
Speak
around.
to that. That's what go on that rant for just a moment. Rant on that, please.
Well, listen, I think the reality is, and I didn't realize this honestly until I started dating my partner, and this sounds interesting. She was one of the first people I've ever met that actually thought the government had her best interest at heart. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, actually? She's like, yeah. Like, don't they just, like, when they mandate something, isn't that good for my best interest? And I was like, what? Like, and she gets mad when I say that, but it's true. But she came from like a very, very privileged life. She had a very, very blessed life. And she just kind of, she's this beautiful soul of like trusting and loving, and like everything's great. And I came from the opposite, right? I came from, gangsters and con artists and manipulators. And like, I saw the police taking money from the gangster. And I saw that shit growing up. And I was like, everyone's getting paid. Everyone's full of shit was my default. So when I started to hear the government saying, hey, everybody, you guys need to do this, I was like, okay, well, who's getting paid, right? They're getting paid. So I was like, there's no way that I'm going to allow myself to fit into this box of like, hey, go put this poison into your body that nobody has any idea what it's going to do 5, 10, 20 years down the road. Go ahead and just trust the government has your best interest at heart. I was like, come on, is this like, am I being punked? Like, there's no way. So, I mean, that's it, man. Like, I think in the reality is, anyone that you talk to that's grown up in a communist country in Europe, or grew up on, say the other side of the law, where they saw like the reality of how things work, they realize that, man, nothing is on the up and up. Very few things are on the up and up. Everyone's got some self-interest at heart, right? So some self-interest. Let's leave it there, right? And so as you see all these people, promoting vaccines, you're like, okay, who's making money? Pharmaceutical companies. Yeah. So do you know that Pfizer in South America, in the first 6 months of COVID, made $8 billion? They hadn't made $8 billion in the last 6 years. And I'm talking just South America. So a friend of mine was like one of the head sales reps for Pfizer in South America, acquaintance. And she's like, yeah, we made $8 billion in the first 6 months of COVID. We hadn't made $8 billion in the last 6 years. And I was like, oh, that's cool. So, okay, well, why then does the government have interest in the pharmaceutical companies making money? Because they're getting paid. They're paying their political regime, right? They're paying for their whatever. They're backing the agendas. So, I mean, yeah, man, I don't want to get into conspiracy theories, but I don't think it's a conspiracy theory. I think it's a reality, right? And I think people just need to realize that, listen, man, chances are either government that gets in there, it's probably both of them are probably going to do the same thing. And then we as a country need to start taking measures into our own hands, as far as like, take care of your shit. Make sure you can take care of yourself. Don't put all of your trust into one person, right? So it's my rebellious mindset that when I was a child, the teachers told me I was going to be a failure and a degenerate. Serves me well, right?
and that's true. Why I asked the question, and I asked the question as a lead-in to what I really want is discernment. Like, I want to show our audience how to discern information. And that's such a sensitive topic that not many people know how to discern. And what you just did in a very methodical way is like, she has this lens of the world, I have this lens of the world, and we're able to come into it and just poke at it and discern information with intelligent curiosity versus a willingness to be manipulated. And I think that there is this healthy curiosity that sometimes people don't know how to actually discern or have a conversation around. So that's something that Andrew and we have a couple of episodes around how to discern information. Yeah, so I wanted to hear from you.
How to think critically, right? How to actually think through something, how to run a cost benefit analysis of your own, your own process. So yeah.
I'll tell you what, man, like, people want to pass off the responsibility for their decisions. Like, they don't want to think. just tell me what to do, right? Just tell me what to do. It's certainly not a masculine trait, is it? Oh, I'll just do whatever you say. Just tell me what to do. Why? Because it's been inculcated in us in the last 60 years in the school system. So that was actually another thing that one of the reasons I pulled my kids out of school. And I gave my son a math paper, and I had a bunch of equations on it. And I said, hey, buddy, go ahead and do this. He had been in school for less than 6 months, maybe like a typical school. And I said, hey, buddy, go ahead and do this. He goes, I don't know what to do, Daddy. I go, what do you mean? He goes, I don't know what to do. I go, why not? Well, you didn't tell me. I go, there's instructions at the top of the paper. He goes, yeah, but you didn't tell me how to do it, Daddy. I was like, he wouldn't even think for himself. And I was like, this is not his fault. This is what he's being taught. So he's like, when I give you instructions, then you can proceed. Until then, sit there like a good boy and don't do anything. And I was like, whoa, right? So this is what we're taught from literally kindergarten all the way through the end of high school. Sit there, cross your hands, don't speak, put up your hand if you want to speak. Oh, don't speak till spoken to. You can't do any work until I tell you exactly how to do it. Like, what? No thanks. Not for me, man.
That hurts. It hurts me to even hear you say it. Like we could talk about education and all that. Like it's a passionate topic for me. So, but thank you for your response. That was perfect. That's what I was looking for. And let me kick it to you, Andrew.
And if we are going to change the direction of the country, of the future, and if we're not going to continue to burden our children and our grandchildren with debt and problems, like education is really the only way to do it, right?
So, man, I want to quickly say that, like, I think that it's too far gone at this point. I think that over 50% of the population is dependent on the government, and when over 50% of the population is dependent on the government, you can't win. So what is the next level, right? And there needs to be organization against like the whatever the manipulation and the control is. And so I think it's like creating small communities of people that are very, very aligned, that you trust deeply. Again, I hope I'm not right. But certainly in Canada where I am now, the gentleman who keeps getting in because over 50% of the population is receiving $2,400 a month or something like that, and they don't have to work. So there's a huge shortage on labor. Nobody wants to work. I'm making $2,400 a month to sit on my ass. All I do is stay home and smoke weed. Isn't it amazing that all the liquor stores and all the marijuana stores were open through COVID and everything else was closed? That's interesting, right? Everyone stays home and they're happy, man. They're happy. They're content. And that's cool. But there's no way that we're going to change those people's mind of like, hey, you need to get out and go to work. You need to work for yourself and hustle. Oh, man, I want to stay home, smoke weed, and play video games. We're in trouble, man. I think we're in trouble. I think if you're someone I don't say use the word woke because that's not the right term, but who's aware of this stuff. I think creating a community of like-minded people who can support each other, including food, protection, schooling, like. Yeah, man. I hope to gosh we can flip it, but it's going to be hard to vote these people out. And even if we did, that's assuming that the other party actually has your best interest at heart, which doesn't seem like it's the reality either. So,
well, thanks so much. I mean, I think Mike and I share a lot of overlap, right, with your viewpoints. And at the very least, it's like, man, we are in some serious shit here. We have stuff to figure out. That's why conversations like this. Yeah, that's why these conversations are so important, though.
Because we can do something. We got to focus on what we can control, our businesses, in our community, and what we do with our kids, how we treat our bodies, how we treat our families, right?
How we come together, and it's a very interesting time to be alive, right? I mean, at the very least, it's a call for us as men to step up and to be leaders. Like we can't sit on the sidelines.
I hope so, but look no further than the Chinese social credit system, right? Like if they put that level of control into the country, there's nothing you can do because they can just shut down your bank. If everything goes to a digital credit, you're fucked. There's nothing you can do because if you in any way push back, sorry guys, we're going to shut you down. If they find that you're talking to the wrong people with the wrong things on a podcast, sorry guys, you can't buy your food today.
I can see the warning sign on our podcast episode right now as we talk.
You guys can remove this. You can remove it.
Well, Justin Donald's episode, he talked about it. He's like, I have a safe, and for this exact reason, it's like I'm not going to keep so much in digital currency.
But how long is it going to last? Right? Like, do you have enough for the next 10 years? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, what does it look like? Is it just like the short term thing, or is this going to be a 10-year deal and or longer? Right? Because like. if they take away, or if they can control our speech and our ability to communicate, and there's no way then to change anything, it's your future, it's your reality, right? They're just going to wait for guys like us to die and assume the next generation is they're conformed, right? They're not going to fight back. That's what it feels like. It's like we're going to kill these guys off, and the next generation, that's going to be their reality. From the time they're born, they're going to be born to a social credit system where they have to follow the rules and pay the government. And the government owns everything, and that's what it feels like, man. And I hope, God, it's not the truth.
Mm-hmm. And that's why the education, right, of our children is so important. If we can come together and figure it out.
And as business owners, using our business is good, which is our final question, which is the business side of what you do, and then we got to head for the exit. So
yeah, I mean, walk us through that a little bit. I mean, you're obviously a really successful business owner, man. Like, what do you do, and what are some of the key lessons that you've learned to grow these businesses that you've run? Walk us through that a little bit.
So I'll first say that none of these things come up in my business. I don't often talk about political issues. But yeah, so in 2011, just prior to my son being born, I was a sponsored athlete. A lot of companies were giving me money to endorse their products, and I enjoyed that. But what I realized was that at any moment they could pull it. At any moment, I was only as good as my most recent placing. So I started creating my own business, and I realized that I had a unique ability to teach, and a unique ability to, I guess I had a unique process by which I built muscle, because it had taken me a long time to finally figure it out. So I started teaching muscle building in 2011, I guess. And that became a really, really big success for me, because I became known as the number one guy in muscle building. I was helping guys put on extraordinary amounts of muscle in a short amount of time. I followed that all the way up to 2016, when I retired from professional bodybuilding in 2016. And I started to realize that as much as I love muscle building at a foundation of everything I do, there's more to me than muscle. So my business evolved to helping people get in shape. And I was like, hey, you know what? I'm not just building muscle. Like, I want to help you guys get in shape. And what you realize, and you guys all understand, is you can't get in shape without changing the mind. So the evolution became, okay, well, now it's helping entrepreneurs, execs, and athletes get in the best shape of their life and feel their best. So it's look, feel, and perform at your best. And so in the last 3 years since COVID, it's really starting to evolve into the fitness is the foot in the door. And what our pitch really is I want you to look, feel, and perform at your best in everything you do, because you don't even realize how much it could change the way you show up in your relationship, the way you show up in your business, the way you show up for your kids. When you feel good all the time, when you have an abundance of energy and health and vitality behind everything you do. Some of my guys in my coaching have like, Ben, my business is 10x in the last 9 months. Like, okay, Ben, my business is 3x in the last year. Like, okay. I'm like, why is that? I'm like, I don't know, man. I just show up differently. I feel better. My energy is better. I'm confident. I'm happy. I'm positive. And all of that at its root, at its foundation, is first, let's help them get healthy. Let's help them not spend huge amounts of conscious time and attention on, I don't know what the hell to do. As you guys said, there's so much confusion out there. So we simplify the path, and then we give them certainty. Like, hey, man, if you just follow this, you don't have to think about it. If you just follow this, you're going to get there. Like, okay, so we're giving them clarity and certainty ultimately. And I love working with guys who are successful and just follow the plan. It's such a gift to work with guys. And I love when the guys question it too. But when they follow through it, they just get amazing, life-changing results. And that's really the business now. We do a lot of one-to-one coaching. We do a lot of education around the world where we coach coaches on our system. So I call it a framework for rapid results. And we just basically provide this educational curriculum for coaches to allow them to succeed in their business as well. So yeah, we toggle between teaching coaches and then helping high-level execs, entrepreneurs, and athletes to just thrive, man. I just want people to feel good. When someone comes and goes, man, I don't know why, but I feel great, I win.
I love
that's
it.
Great. Yeah, that's great. And selfish last question. I heard you mention you partnered with Oura Ring, and you got into that before it was a huge company. I heard that on one of your episodes a couple years ago. What's the biggest lesson you learned from just being like a fly on the wall of like seeing and witnessing the growth of that company?
I'm not sure how much I'm at liberty to say.
True. That's why I was curious.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what, what I can say is the people who started the company were very limited in their capability to grow it to what it is now. And so they brought some people in who had a big vision and the ability to execute on it and scaled it unbelievably fast and unbelievably well with an incredible network of people and a really good product, right? I think the product is exceptional. With the original owners, it was very different. They came in, they made it modern, they made it sexy, they made it sleek, they made it cool. The other one was not cool. It was very much like fringe, like you'd have to be a really special person, like kind of blue light blocking glasses esque, right? Like not everyone's going to wear a pair of like red glasses, and it's never going to be cool. It's acceptable, but it's like that's never going to be cool. And so they took this ring and they made it like trendy, like oh shit, everyone's got this ring, and that was really great, and kept great relationships, chose the right people. I'm sure their margins are exceptional. One thing that I think worked, I'm not sure if it worked for them or against them, was I don't know if you guys ordered a ring during the time when there was a 3-month waiting period. I don't know if they did that on purpose, but I thought it was brilliant because everyone would order their ring and like, hey, you can't get your ring for 3 months, and everyone's like, oh my god, it's such a high demand, I better order quick. I don't know if it was on purpose or if it was contrived or if it was intentional, but yeah, it's been a great company, great people, man. Love them to death, and it looks like they're I think they're well on their way to like $2 billion valuation, which is huge.
That's sick.
And if I heard right, I mean, you got in when it was like 3 million or something like that.
Super low, yeah, super low.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was like it was like the first round, I think.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. So our final 3 questions that we have: hard hitting, short hitting, very fast, first response to end the show today. Question number 1: what do you think the world needs most today?
Men. Lead, man. So, man, I didn't have a man. I didn't have a, well, I should say that. My grandfather was an incredible man, and he led me in my young years and passed away. Men need leaders, or sorry, humanity needs leaders. And for leaders to have the courage to step up and face the very likely, almost certain ridicule and, being canceled. And like, we got to create communities of men that teach men how to lead.
Awesome. Second question is, what 1 to 3 books would you recommend people check out? You mentioned Real Love and the 25-year framework already, but any other books you'd like to recommend to our audience?
Well, assuming the audience has got some parents in there, Hold On to Your Kids was a great one by Gabor Mate and somebody else. That's an exceptional book, and I think everyone should read that because it changes the paradigm of like, remember I briefly mentioned that people think that, oh, your kids got to get socialized. Well, he completely breaks that myth in that book and gives you like the reality of what kids actually need when they're young. I thought that was very helpful. I think that's it. I might give you 10 more if you want, but depending what direction.
That's perfect. And what do you think what does it mean to you to be better than rich?
Man, to me, providing value in life brings wealth, right? So become a valuable human. It's funny. I don't know how the hell I figured this out so young, but at 17 years old, Tony Robbins was actually one of the guys I was like, that's my guy. And I said, I want to be invited to the table. This was literally like on my deathbed. So when you write your obituary, I'm like, what is your life mission? Is I want to be invited to the table. And Tony was at Tony. It was Tony's table, to be honest. And so what that means is I'm not going to like invite myself to the table. I'm not going to pay to play at the table. I want to be invited to the table as someone that everyone that's sitting at that table, which is your 10 most influential people in your life, every one of them sees as much value in you as you do in them. And that to me is like the guiding, for me, the North Star. So wealth comes, in my opinion, from providing value. So if I get invited to that table, it means I'm providing so much value to 10 of the people that I respect most. So that's what it means.
Beautiful. Hey, Ben, this has been amazing. Where can people learn more, and if they want to follow along with Muscle Intelligence and learn more about you and what you're up to?
And thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Michael. I think the best place is just check the podcast. If you listen to podcasts already, Muscle Intelligence podcast. So most people seem to enjoy my solo casts. I also have been on many other podcasts, but most people seem to enjoy my solo casts. And to be honest, I often talk about fitness-oriented things. It's usually muscle building. It's usually fitness. It's usually longevity, just because that's what people know me for. I don't often get thrown down these paths of masculinity and politics, but I love talking about it. It's just not when you're standing there in front of a computer, staring at yourself. It's not always easy to get passionate about talking about the political agendas and all the things going on in the world. So thank you guys for asking great questions.
Yeah, and I will say your podcast episodes have the experts. I mean, it is absolutely incredible. So I encourage all of our listeners to go to Muscle Intelligence podcast because I picked up, like I said, lifespan and the inflammation spectrum. Dr. Will Cole from listening to a lot of those episodes and just learning more about how to get healthy and everything from blood, everything from your urine testing, everything from what to eat, seasons to eat certain foods in, inflammation, what causes certain your digestion tract. I mean, unbelievable blue light stuff, vitamin D, like everything that has to do with health. It's a beautiful, beautiful podcast, unbelievable value. So thank you, Ben, for your time, your wisdom, and assuming you, the listener, if assuming this episode helped you. Well, it's your turn to help others by sharing this with a friend. Subscribe to YouTube. Leave a rating and review on Apple and Spotify. And just always remember, leave today better than you found it. Till next time.
What's up, guys? Biggs here. I hope you enjoyed that clip. If you did, go ahead and check out the other video that's being recommended on the screen right now. You can also subscribe to our channel. And then if you really are interested in what we do, go to automatedelegatesystemize.com to learn more about what we're up to. Thanks again.